Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about CDM and the journey that we've all been on for 10 years. Shahid, I'm going to throw it over to you. We're asking about specific programs, and you are in a situation there where you're, again, striped across all these various agencies. Give us an example of one program you'd like to highlight.
For us, really, it would be our own journey, right? And where we went from, around our automation, around our security operations center and zero trust.
Okay.
That was a 3-year journey for the organization. And a lot of that conversation that we have with our customers is what are we trying to accomplish when it comes to zero trust, right? It took some time to understanding what are our needs, what your business needs are, what are you actually trying to protect, and then layering on, the solutions that we have in place, right? Palo Alto plus others, right, that we have in place to really implement a full zero trust network. At the same time, delivering the services, right, without compromising user experience, right? The employees, our research team, everyone that can consume the data, make sure that they have access to the data quicker and faster, right? Without any kind of compromise of security, right? So and vice versa. So that's really one of the big things that we've done pretty well. We've gone to like a 24/7 operations center to an 8x5. A lot of automation in place that was really helpful and successful for us as an organization.
Fantastic. And didn't go unnoticed that the journey is complex, right? It's not just sort of plug and play. Even a superpower such as Palo Alto takes 3 years to roll these things out. So we certainly do appreciate that. Richard, you top-lined, the entire program right at the beginning of the program here. Why don't you give us a specific example of one area that you'd like to focus on and sort of illuminate for our listening audience?
Yeah, thanks again, Luke. I'll give you 2 key initiatives that we have on the program and 2 significant milestones, both of which are the first time we've ever done this, which is exciting for us. Let me go back real quick to the dashboard. So for those that track CISA, we have an authority called a binding operational directive, right? This allows us to issue specific guidance to agencies to do some sort of activity. About this time last year, we issued BOD 2201, which is the known exploited vulnerabilities BOD. And again, as an aside, one of the things I want to make sure the audience realizes that even though we're doing zero trust, even though we are trying to continuously evolve, there are some blocking and tackling aspects to cyber, right? Like vulnerability management, like David was mentioning earlier. You got to do that stuff.
The table stakes are important.
Yeah. And so that BOD was reinforcing that, hey, vulnerabilities are still a thing in software. They will be for a long time, potentially forever. You got to deal with them, right? And here are the ones that we think, based on intelligence, are worth getting first, right? That kind of goes with the CDM mantra, fix the worst first. Anyways, so the BOD last year was released, and they've been manually reporting, agencies have been manually reporting those data sets for about a year. For the first time ever, we will be using CDM investments and the data that are in the architecture to automate those reporting when the clock ticks over to October, right? So no longer will we be requiring agencies who have data in the platforms to report via spreadsheets manually. We will have our operators looking at automated data first as a preference to responding to those BOD data calls, right? And that's delivering on a long-standing promise that the program has had for almost 10 years. So I'm very excited about
every
that.
agency out there is applauding whether they show it on camera or not.
Yes, and that's so important because really one of the things that we're trying to do is drive value in all this work that we've been working with agencies on, right? We want to make sure that these investments aren't just another thing in your operations center, that they're used strategically for key initiatives across the cyber government. So that's really exciting. And then the other milestone that we've hit is CISA EDR initiative. The program has kind of been bootstrapping that. This goes back to the EO. We are incredibly deep into this right now. We expect to be done with most of our work by FY23. And as people have been tracking the EDR initiative, whether it's in the cyber EO or M2201, which is the EDR memo, you'll see language in there that talks about CISA having persistent access to agency EDR tools. Again, beginning of this month, first time we've been able to do that. Our threat hunting teams now have persistent access to agency tools and can do collaborative threat hunting with them, right? And this is incredibly important because it changes the paradigm for CISA, before of us being a reactionary agency, for us being now a proactive agency, and helping agencies identify risk in near real time, kind of changing the game to a collaborative operations type of setup. The one of the things I hope the agencies appreciate is that everybody really likes a second set of eyes. We're not there to take day-to-day operations over. We're really there looking for specific things, double checking things, helping you identify things you may have missed if that's the case. And so I'm really excited about kind of where CISA is going to really provide a lot more value to our agency customers on initiatives such as this.
Yeah, and I think that the extra set of eyes, I'm sure, is appreciated, particularly if you can do it in sort of a pull fashion, and it's not, a bunch more calories that they have to use to be reporting, et cetera. Well, let's talk about priorities. And David, I'm going to start with you, and give us your top couple of priorities that you all are focused on regarding CDM for this year, or perhaps, coming up now. We're at the end of the fiscal year, going forward.
Sure. And, we're on a march of continuous improvement and have been for years. Our focus is out there really data quality, getting our numbers aligned, aligning our devices with FISMA boundaries, tightening up our data, endpoint detection and response, complying with 2201, deploying our EDR agent across the endpoints, tool integration, getting our tools better integrated, Forescout with our ticketing management, Priv and user management solution, and additional integration with our edge services. And then maybe finally in that, dashboards and isolated networks, pressing into the isolated networks with visibility for CDM.
A lot of activity there and a lot of major focus. Jamie, how about over at Justice Programs? Top 2 or 3 priorities for you for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly aligning with the things that were outlined in the cybersecurity executive order, which I think is actually a great kind of just hearken to the CDM program. So a lot of the things that were outlined in there and that are kind of masquerading as a new requirement are really just, things that are kind of mapped back to the tenets and the poles of CDM. So I think that that's really important for agencies to remember in terms of, it seems like there's all these new mandates and new requirements, but really if you're holding fast to those core principles, you're already well on your way to achieving success in that area. And so for us, it's really taking advantage of the tool sets that are made available by CDM in terms of meeting those mandates. And for us, it's rolling out EDR. I think that's a really high priority for me at the Office of Justice Programs, but also the larger Department of Justice is gaining that insight and allowing that second pair of eyes, just as Richard was describing, because we need all the help that we can get in that arena. So that's definitely paramount. And then beyond that, really getting a hold of our mobile footprint. And so, looking ahead to mobile threat defense as well.
No question, that's becoming a significant requirement going forward. Adam, again, you all are striped across a lot of different agencies. What's the demand signal? What's the priority requirements that you all are seeing going forward?
Yeah, so in the last couple of segments, we've been talking a lot about tools as mechanisms for protection. And now it's kind of taking that same view and changing the lens a little bit to more objectives and missions. So tying tools and capabilities to actual mission objectives for the organizations. It's no longer just about what's a silver bullet tool that's going to solve my problems. It's going to be how do I continue to evolve my capabilities, leveraging tool sets across different use cases, and then getting the best value out of my deployments. So to us, it's driving value for our clients.
Up the value chain, as they say. We started with what's on your network and then who's on your network, and instrumented that, lit it up like a Christmas tree. And now we're really pushing up this value chain with the dashboards, et cetera. Lamont, what would be your top 2 or 3 priorities that you're going to focus on this year?
Sure. Of course, we have a few over here at HHS as well. I think I heard Jamie over at DOJ mention EDR. We too are seeking to improve in that space, of course, through EO 14028. The CDM program, sought to improve malicious, cyber activity detection on federal networks through this government-wide endpoint EDR system. So CISA through CDM has been working throughout FY22 to document close gaps in enterprise EDR coverage in, the civilian executive branch agency. So through this partnership, HHS has been deploying EDR capabilities to meet the requirements of the EO and OMB mandates. And to date, we've successfully procured 100,000 plus endpoint licenses to satisfy the need across our 10 operating divisions. And I guess I'll mention another priority is in PAM, privileged access management. We want to seek to continue to mature our identity and access management through deploying and implementing and configuring PAM capabilities as part of the overall CDM solution. So
no question. And for those that may not know what EDR is, since you referred to it a couple times.
Endpoint detection is technologies to kind of identify anomalies in your endpoints or your IP-enabled devices throughout your infrastructure, and a response mechanism when anomalies are detected.
Super important, very much part of the end game, if you will. Shahid, top priorities that you're seeing. What's the demand signal that you all are getting in respect to Palo Alto?
So kind of circle back to what Richard said earlier and around the vulnerability management. I think David said the same thing. Really, what we've been doing is kind of our partnership with like the JCDC, what we're doing with NIST, right? And folks, CISA. We're working on automating the detection of like the known exploit vulnerability catalog, right? The CISA KEV. What we're doing around our CLAW and automating the logging ingestion, right? So that we're integrated with the CLAW to provide you that initial insight and data points. But what's really been successful is the automation, how quickly we're able to get those vulnerabilities in and provide our customers with the report of, hey, based on the current BOD, this is what we're seeing in the environments, and that way we can prioritize what needs to be remediated quicker and addressed first with our agency.
Super important element of the entire ecosystem. Richard, you top-lined a lot of different activities there. Give us your sort of top couple of priorities that you're focusing on for the next year.
Yeah, so as some people might not know, we're turning 10. So it's our decennial, our first one, right? We're very excited about that. So what we're trying to do, what's going to be a very large priority for us, is to try to figure out how to evolve the program for the next 10 years, right? Nothing stays still in cyber, and our contracts that kind of drive the program start to kind of terminate early calendar year 24, right? So we have to start our strategic planning now. And so we're all taking a good look, doing a lot of soul searching to figure out, hey, what's working, what's not working, what has changed. To wit, there is a lot of things that we can do to make CDM, quote unquote, easier for our customers, especially when it comes to things like data integration. We want to be a lot more nimble, a lot more modular, a lot more flexible to allow agencies to do CDM the way that they want to do it, and to us to come in with a very tailored model for support to help them get to that destination. And so that's kind of the principles that we're looking at to try to evolve the program to really be the best support element we possibly can on doing CDM. So that's a big thing that we'll be spending a lot of our cycles on. We wanted to continue to demonstrate value in the tools that we provide. So continue to put out operational use case for the dashboard. We talked about automation reporting of KEVs and vulnerabilities earlier. I also want to move into automation of FISMA metrics as well. That's a key thing for us that we want to look to do. We want to supercharge our mobile efforts, which I think some people mentioned earlier. So moving into enterprise mobility management, mobile threat defense, and getting those telemetry sets into the dashboard to further kind of supercharge the automation part that we were talking about earlier. And then, of course, can't talk about future without zero trust. We want to take a little bit more of a deliberate planning approach when it comes to zero trust. So we are looking at certain industries like identity as a service, SASE or ZTNA, whatever you want to call it, to try to figure out how those capabilities relate to CDM, how they relate to zero trust, and what is the best way for us to offer that to our constituencies to help them build foundational parts of zero trust and kind of mature out of that.
A lot of moving parts there, and all super important. Got a lot of head nods on that FISMA. I think there's not a person on this panel that wouldn't love to see a push button FISMA metric scorecard in the future. And it's sort of like ATO in a day, right? Super important activities. Well, let's start talking about the question that, quite frankly, is one of my favorite ones. And oftentimes we don't get to it, but it's about lessons learned. We've got a lot of horsepower, a lot of heavyweights on here. You are really leaning in on this program. I always like to share the lessons learned in regards to the journey that you've been on. David, I'm going to start with you. You've got the boots on the ground. You're completely operational there. You pointed that out to us. Give us some lessons learned, because, across these agencies, everyone's at a different point in time. And I always think this is super valuable to the community.
Sure. I think it really is on the softer side. People and process implement the technology in the program. So trust and commitment and collaboration up and down the stack are fundamental to execution. At EPA, we're in a great position. We have Vaughn Noga, who's our CIO, has broad experience across operations and InfoSec, and he's actively engaged in the program. Tanya and I make commitments at the beginning of every fiscal year of what we're going to achieve, and we brief him out on a weekly basis on a subset of those projects with our staff. So he's engaged and he knows what's going on and is actively involved in it. And then our appointed leadership are engaged and supportive of the program also. And so up and down, from the top of the rack down to the staff, we know where we're going and we go there together in collaboration. And that really, I think, is fundamental to the successes that we've achieved.
Soft side's always really important. Jamie, top lessons learned for you all as you've been on this journey.
Yeah, I think, as David said, being strategic in how you're going to achieve your goals at the start of the fiscal year, and entering into collaborative relationships with your operations folks. So it's great that David and Tanya are in lockstep, just as I am with my operations team at the Office of Justice Programs. And then I think really one of the biggest lessons learned too, because, the Department of Justice, we've been in the dashboard game for quite a while, but that, the validity of, the dashboard data has gotten really a lot better over time. And so, it's been normalizing, and we've been able to take better advantage of using that data to make decisions and to prioritize our limited resources. And so I think working collaboratively with DHS, to give them feedback on the data has been key. And having a good relationship with the CDM PMO, right? Just to they're there to help us, to assist us. And so working with them to assess our environments and find out what is really needed to achieve our goals has been paramount for us.
And I think if I could just pull that thread just a moment, relationship with the CDM program, very important. Relationship with the department, also very important, right? You're kind of dancing on two pinnacles there, if you will. How is that coordination working in regards to just sort of the lessons learned, and as that is all evolved, as all these all this direction, let's say, that had come down sort of fast and furious over the last few years?
Yeah. So no, that's a great question. And I think it's really kind of harkening back to what David was saying about those collaborative relationships. And so for me, as a component of the Department of Justice, it's really been very important for me to maintain my relationship with the Justice Management Division Cybersecurity Services staff, because they're the ones that have that relationship with the CDM PMO and are doing an assessment on behalf of the department. And so being forthcoming with what's working and what's not working and what our needs are, is just really, I can't stress the importance of that enough. And then participating, if you do have bandwidth, in some of piloting some of the technologies and seeing really what's going to work for you and your agency, because not everything is going to work perfectly, and it may entail making some changes on your end, or making some larger security architecture changes on behalf of the department. And so again, just having those feedback loops and partnering and constantly being in communication is really important.
Yeah, and that early adoption really important, especially the lessons learned getting back to the community. I know the CDM program has done a fantastic job of that. All right, we're going to take another short break. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.